Mr. Blickenstaff. I'm going to read a column of mine from 2009. You know, I'm really regretting now that I didn't include that in my book, because maybe I can make at least one sale out of this. But I'm sorry, John, you didn't make the cut for the book. But this is from March 4th of 2009. And the headline of this was a fond, calm farewell to Laverne's soothing mayor. Monday was Jon Blickenstaff's last meeting as mayor of Laverne, an occasion for praise, laughter, and even poetry. The city's poet laureate composed a few lines for Blickenstaff that begin, "In his family tradition of public service, the shadow is long cast by this man." Not many Inland Valley mayors would merit a poem. One or two might get a dirty limerick. Which goes to show that Blickenstaff, the hometown boy who's been mayor since 1980, is in his own class. As a Gold Line rail official put it Monday, John brought a quality you don't often find in politics, and that is calm. In the course of leading 621 council meetings, Blickenstaff surely lost his cool now and then, but the overriding impression he leaves is one of unflappability. Robert Rodriguez, a councilman since 1982, told me that in the early 1980s there were some hot meetings lasting well past midnight regarding development in the foothills, which Blickenstaff opposed successfully. When tempers flared, Blickenstaff would interrupt the proceedings, remind everyone to listen respectfully, and then resume the meeting. He would always calm people down, Rodriguez told me. Xanax in mayoral form? Perhaps, although I sense an iron fist inside that velvet glove. Blickenstaff is always genial, always gentlemanly, but he's no pushover. He's also relentlessly cheerful. Referring to a University Laverne banquet last weekend that drew 800 people, the mayor said, "It's hard to believe how much honor can be bestowed on our city." He praised city employees for their phenomenal competence and said serving Laverne is just a joy to me. Blickenstaff, 64, decided not to seek re-election. Unless the earth shifts off its axis, he'll be replaced by council ally Don Kendrick, who ran unopposed Tuesday. After the meeting, Blickenstaff said he had worried he would lose his composure during the meeting's tributes and his own parting remarks, but true to form, he stayed calm. "So many wonderful people," Blickenstaff told me, beaming. "Makes it easy to look like you're doing a good job." In his case, appearances were not deceiving. He did do a good job. Poetry in motion.
That was fantastic.
Thanks.
I subscribe to the Inland Valley Daily Bulletin print edition, and I read it every morning with my coffee. It's one of those retirement things I like to do. So we have come to another calm, fond farewell, where we say Godspeed, goodbye to our friends Jon and Jon Blickenstaff, who are moving from Laverne, and they're moving to the Santa Ynez Valley. And so it sounds like an exciting new chapter. I'm going to say just a couple words. Here I am again, telling you about a couple about whom most of you have known far longer than I. This is a form of imposter syndrome, and I am simply waiting to find out just how much and how much better so many people know Jon and Joan. I did not attend school in Laverne, nor did my daughter, nor can my husband Jon and I claim generational roots here. We've only been here since 2001, which makes us newbies for sure. We did not attend school or work in education or city government with Jon or Joan, whom I understand were the backbone of the Bonita Unified School District for many years. And of course, Jon was Laverne's mayor for 27 years. You don't get much more involved than that. What I can say, and I know Jon the best, is that he is one of the kindest, most insightful, and masterful students of human nature I have ever known. This is an unbeatable and rare combination. As a school administrator and city leader, he was in a position of authority and some power, which does not always bring out the best in people, as we are discovering. But using one's authority to support people and their goals is characteristic of the Blickenstaffs. Jon shared with me that he was interim principal at Oak Mesa School at a time when the daughter of a local resident was to be enrolled there. She has a disability, and Jon made it his business that she be included in all aspects of school life. Before it was fashionable or mandated, Jon advocated for an inclusive approach to education. For him, being compassionate, kind, and solution-oriented never went out of fashion. It was simply natural. As a last act of kindness and support, Jon and Joan made multiple donations to the Laverne Historical Society for its recent vintage sale. Our donations all go towards supporting society activities like this and restoring our 1938 International truck. This year, the vintage sale yielded over $1,700, allowing us to complete our restoration and proudly participate in the July 4th parade. It couldn't have happened without this final push from Jon and Joan Blickenstaff. We wish you all the best as you explore this next chapter in your lives, because you will always be our neighbors. I'd like to invite Jeff Allred up to say a few words.
Good evening. And when I heard the news that Jon and Joan were moving, the house was for sale, and they were moving out of town, I was shocked. In fact, I was stunned. And so much so that I remember I was driving and I had to pull over a little bit to the side of the road to process it. This is Mr. Laverne, Jon Blickenstaff, right? Say it ain't so. And I was just shocked. Has anybody else had a reaction somewhat like that, or am I just the only one? No, it's quite a thing. And I had the great pleasure of working closely with Jon Blickenstaff, Mayor Blickenstaff, for over 16 years. And oh, what wonderful years those were. I think that Jon treated city employees like family. Okay? We knew he loved us. And can you imagine, and then I'd say, he even referred to us as the dream team, often. So can you imagine how we felt about him and our jobs, right? It's just pretty amazing. Jon was always laser focused on enhancing the quality of life in Laverne. So we knew our mission, right? And he was also focused on looking to the future. And as a great leader, this focus led Laverne to become the first city in the San Gabriel Valley to create a comprehensive organizational strategic plan, right? That was unheard of, really. No other city in the valley had done it, maybe to our knowledge at all, had done it in Southern California. And it became my responsibility to help, Jon and the council and all of our department heads that worked on this plan to put it in written form. And the resulting progress and accomplishment as a result of that strategic plan were astounding. I'll just say a few things about it. The public safety department, or public safety, was the #1 priority. The police and fire departments were professionalized with state state-of-the-art equipment and purpose and programs. The paramedic program was created. How many of you remember that? Remember that you paid every fee every couple months, right? On our water bill, right? There's a paramedic fee. That was a result of our strategic planning, and you approved it. So when people complain about it, we remind people that, hey, you voted for this, right? We had competitive salaries and benefits, and as a result of respectful and harmonious employee relations, policies, and long-term agreements. Laverne became a model and the envy of the cities in the San Gabriel Valley and beyond. Not too many cities can say that they hadn't had any really tough, contentious employee relations problems, right? But we didn't. It's because of leadership and trust that the department heads, that the employee organizations, the unions, they had trust that we were led by good people like Jon Blickenstaff. The city, let's see here, hang on. Another focus of Jon's was, one of his statements often was, there is power in partnerships. Partnerships as opposed to isolation, right? And as a result of that, we had a number of really great things that occurred through the power of partnerships. Heritage Park was built with home developers relocating the Weber House, the historic Weber House, and the Sloan Barn to the site of what is now Heritage Park, right next to a historical preserved orange grove. How many of you have been to Heritage Park? We have concerts in the park there on the Sunday evenings in the summer, and it's just a beautiful thing. And it was done through partnerships with developers. How many times can you imagine home developers go through all that trouble to move a historic home and barn and preserving it in orange grove? And it was because of there's power in partnerships. Oak Mesa School and Park on Wheeler Avenue were constructed in partnership with the Bonita Unified School District. That's not always the case in communities where the school district and the city get along well. But Jon saw to it that was the case in Laverne. Various sports park facilities greatly enhanced Bonita High School. Our former Parks and Community Services Director, Bill Gary, is here, and Bill can attest to these great things. I'll mention 5 of them. One is Glenn Davis Stadium. Glenn Davis Stadium is a beautiful facility. Always wasn't the case. I remember when there were no lights there, right? And the grass wasn't good, and the track was horrible. It was cinder, right? And then now look at it now. It's state of the art. I was there the other night for the high school graduation and just marveled at how beautiful it is. Number 2, the baseball and soccer facilities fields were built there. The skate park, number 3. Number 4, the softball field at Los Flores Park. It serves as the high school through cooperation with the city because it's a park. Number 5, the Laverne Aquatic Center at Los Flores Park was funded by an innovative redevelopment bond that resulted in 0 tax increases or tax assessments of any kind to Laverne residents or businesses. Imagine that. How many of you have seen the Laverne Aquatic Center? It's a very vibrant facility in our community. It serves kids that swim on the swim teams at Bonita High School, water polo, the high school and clubs, and kids want to swim there. And it costs the city of residents 0 through an innovative. I could go through, take me a while to explain a lot of the things that happened, but it was legal. In fact, we were a little, we weren't quite sure it was legal in this great idea we had. So we talked to our city attorney, and he said, "Hey, well, let's sue ourselves, and let's sue ourselves and see if it's legal." And we did. It was the city of Laverne versus city of Laverne, and a judge ruled that it was legal. And so we did it, and just a great thing for the community, and zero cost to us as residents and businesses. John's focus on power partnerships extended well beyond Laverne. He served for many years as the chairman of the board for Tri-City Mental Health, a public joint powers authority serving the most needy people in the cities of Pomona, Claremont, and Laverne. Tri-City is an amazing organization that does great things for people that are the most in need in our communities. John was the chairman of the board for many years. Also, simultaneously, John served as the chairman of the board for the Gold Line Construction Authority to extend the light rail from Los Angeles to Pasadena all the way to Laverne, Pomona, and then on to Claremont and Montclair. Okay, and you notice that the station in Laverne is almost finished. In fact, I think it's finished. They're just doing testing now, and then will be opened later this summer. John was the chairman of the board for the Gold Line Construction Authority. I could go on and list many accomplishments during those 16 amazing years. But John went on to serve. I was the assistant city manager, and I had aspirations to be the city manager of Laverne. My problem was that our excellent city manager, Marty Lamelli, was my age, and he wasn't leaving. Even though every once in a while he'd say, "I'm thinking I'm going to apply for this job," and I'd kind of go, "Oh, good, Marty, go for it." And in fact, he'd get job offers and he couldn't leave. He wanted to come back, to stay in Laverne. So I left, to pursue my dreams elsewhere. But we still lived in Laverne all these years. So I would just say this, and rather than go on with the recitation of all the wonderful things that occurred, I just want to say that John and Joan, I speak for hundreds of Laverne employees and thousands of fellow residents and many of your friends that are here when I say thank you for all you have done for your and our hometown of Laverne. Your dedication and contributions will never be forgotten. We sincerely wish you both much happiness and joy in your new family adventure in the San Ynez Valley. Thank you, John and Joan.
I love Jon Blickenstaff. May he rest in peace. Just kidding, John, just kidding. David Brooks wrote a book about the character, and he said that there are resume attributes and there are funeral attributes. And what we've heard today are funeral attributes. And those are the ones we most aspire to. So I do have just a few thoughts. I'm going to just go back in John's history. Before he turned 1 year old, John was less than 1 year old when a woman named Martha Lear at the Church of the Brethren went to members of the church and said, "We, the members of this church, feeling keenly for the well-being of our older members, to petition the church to build a home, to create a place where we could care for our older members." And so in my office, I have a handwritten ledger of people who said yes. And 110 people signed that petition that she passed around. And it first went to the local pastor, and then it went up the ladder because the local church couldn't do it by themselves. And there was enough excitement about building this place that people started donating money. And I have in that ledger Alice Harmon, who gave $1, and then later was able to give $2, so she gave $3. I also have in that ledger a donation by a woman named Lily Price Dredge, who is John's grandmother. And she donated $3,000 to build a home at Hillcrest. And that would have built a home back in those days. That was the value of a house, to build a house. And she lived at Hillcrest, but never owned the house because she was donating to the mission. That was signed by those 110 people. And so John, those are some of his roots of service and of love of neighbor. And he has served on the Hillcrest board for 9 years, That's longer in complete succession than any other board member I know. Somebody's come back later after a break, but he's in his 9th year. He's finishing up his 9th year. So that is really impressive. And I wrote a poem for him, because I want you to be the only mayor who gets 2 poems. The mayor of our town is leaving home. He leaves behind 1,000 friends today. He gave his time, his strength, the best he had, his legacy forever, here, to stay. So in that thought, perhaps he's still quite near. He's all around this town that we hold dear. We'll miss you, John and Joan, and hope you'll soon return to see your 1,000 friends here in Laverne.
This is really overwhelming, and I deeply appreciate the 95 people that are here for David Allen and 5 for me, actually. I haven't written any books, but here's my speech right here. And just gratitude, feeling humble, feeling highly honored, feeling blessed. People were talking about Roberta's. I belong to a group of the Thursday morning breakfast that started by Leland Wilson, and it was called the Young Men's Breakfast 50 years ago. And we've been meeting almost every Thursday. One morning he invited his young daughter to the breakfast, and she looked around and said, "Where are the young men?" David, I'm one of the people that have caused your circulation to dwindle after my wife and I have subscribed faithfully for about 60 years, but we'll need to sign up for the e-version of it. I'm glad to realize that that's available. So many things going on. I'm going to try to keep this really brief. J. Marion Royman, who was an administrator here at Hillcrest a long time ago, was quoted in Evelyn Hollinger's book at the very beginning. The title page said, "Our goal is to make Laverne the kind of place where it's easier to do the right thing than the wrong thing for our children." And I believe that Laverne is that kind of a city. It's been that way, I think, forever. And so many people who've grown up doing the right things. Somebody asked the question about the Fairplex. What's one of the highlights that David had? A highlight of mine was when I was, I think, 7 years old. We lived on Orange Street, which is no longer in existence, but that's the farthest south you can go in Laverne. Right above that's Walnut Street, but I lived on Orange Street. And we could ride horses without any fences almost wherever we wanted to go. During the fair, they had a horse show. And I didn't even know what a horse show was, but we had a couple of horses, and we lived adjacent to the fair, to where the fair is now. So my folks put us on a horse, and when I say us, it was my older sister, and me, and my younger sister, all 3 of us riding one horse, which we could do from our house to the fair without any fences or gates or anything. And that was fun. And they had judging, and we came riding home with the biggest ribbons I've ever seen. We won a big prize for, maybe it was the most people on one horse, I don't know. But 3 kids on a horse riding to the fair. No admission, no worries about that kind of thing. But just so many memories in Laverne. And one of the Historical Society projects right now is the carobwood tree that came out of Coons Park, and Ruben Guajardo is here tonight. He's the artist, and he's now working on some projects from that carobwood tree. This is all sponsored by the Historical Society and Sherry's passion for keeping things like that going. Ruben did the doors here at Hillcrest leading into the chapel, and the library doors. So those kinds of projects that will continue on. I want to say a word about Sherry. She's doing a marvelous job as the president of the Historical Society, keeping the history of Laverne alive, and it's vital that that continue to happen. I also want to say thank you to my wife, Joan. I could not have done any of this without her support, her encouragement, her ideas, her continued presence, and say, let's keep going, let's keep doing this, and the quality of life that we've enjoyed is certainly reflected by the support that I've received from her. I don't know how much longer we want to go on. If anybody had a couple of questions, I was impressed with David and his openness about questions. If anybody has a question that I might answer, I'd be certainly open to that. Anything that you might have wondered about the years here in Laverne, all my life, and I can't imagine a youngster growing up in a better environment and having more opportunities to be involved with the city. I got deeply involved as a volunteer fireman. Can you believe that Laverne had nothing but volunteer firefighters for a long time? I did that. The firefighters said, I really ought to get involved, get this city straightened out back then, so they encouraged me to run for council, and that was in 1980, and I did that, and then was elected mayor, and it's just been wonderful. So I thank everyone for being here tonight. Thank you for your support. So many other stories that we could go on with, I'll cut it short. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it.